Hello students, this is Sudeep Mazumdar, your science teacher and mentor. I am again back with a new video on metals and non-metals. In this video, you will learn about how ionic compounds are formed and what is the science of metallurgy. The concept areas to be discussed in this chapter is formation of ionic compound and extraction of metals. Now the question is, how do metals and non-metals react? Now, students, you must know what are metals. Metals are those elements which lose electron and become positive ions. Therefore, they are called as electropositive elements. Now, we have to understand this concept with an example. Suppose we take sodium. The atomic number of sodium is 11. Its electronic configuration is 281 as per Bohr-Bury scheme. This you have learned in your previous class, that is in class 9th. So, sodium as per this electronic configuration has one valence electron. Now students, you know what is a valence electron? The electron which is present in the outermost orbit of an element. Every element wants to achieve inert gas configuration as noble gas. So sodium, which has one valence electron, it loses one electron and forms a sodium ion. Metals are electropositive because they lose electron to become cations. Non-metals, on the other hand, they gain electrons and become negative ions. So they are called electronegative element. Take for example chlorine. The atomic number of chlorine is 17. So as per Bohr-Bury scheme of electronic configuration, it is 287. Chlorine has 7 valence electron, so therefore it gains 1 electron to form a chloride ion. This we can understand the loss and gain of electron by formation of sodium chloride. The atomic number of sodium is 11. As you see, so its electronic configuration is 281 and it has one valence electron. It loses one electron to form sodium ion. The atomic number of chlorine is 17. On the other hand, its electronic configuration is 287. So it has 7 valence electron. So it gains one electron to form chloride ions. The attraction between the positive ion and the negative ion of sodium and chlorine results in the formation of sodium chloride molecule, NaCl. Now this was one example of ionic compound. We can have many more examples like magnesium chloride, which you will study in page 48 of NCERT. You can practice more of these examples, how formation of ionic compound take place. Now coming to the properties of ionic compound, we have many points. Suppose they are the physical nature. Ionic compounds, as you see, are solid and some are hard because of the strong force of attraction between the positive and the negative ion. These compounds are generally brittle and break into pieces when pressure is applied. Regarding the melting and boiling point, ionic compounds have high melting and boiling point. This is because a considerable amount of energy is required to break the strong inter-ionic attraction. Electrovalent compounds are soluble in water and they are insoluble in solvents such as kerosene, petrol, ether, which are organic solvents. Now coming to the conductivity, that is conduction of electricity through of an ionic compound in water is very appropriate because the ionic compound contains ions and ionic compound, because of these ions, there is flow of electricity in molten state. So to sum up the properties of ionic compounds, we can sum up as that ionic compounds are formed by the transfer of electrons and are made up of ions. Ionic compounds are generally crystalline solid. Ionic compounds have high melting and high boiling points. Most of the ionic compounds, they are soluble in water, but they are insolvent in organic solvents. And ionic compounds conduct electricity in molten state or in solution. Now coming to the second most important part of this chapter is science of metallurgy, that is extraction of metals. As you know, the Earth's crust is a major source of metal. Seawater also contains some soluble salts such as sodium chloride, magnesium chloride, and we have to extract the metals from the earth crust. So that science is known as metallurgy. So metallurgy, what is metallurgy? Metallurgy is a science of extraction of metal, its purification. So that is very, very important in commercial use also, and as a student of science you should know in these classes how metals are extracted. Now before coming to the main topic, we should know what are minerals. Now minerals are elements or compounds which occur naturally inside the earth's crust. At some places minerals contain a very high percentage of particular metal and the metals can be profitably extracted from it. Then they are called as ores. Now what is gangue? Gangue are the impurities present in the ore like rock particles, sand particles, clay particles, and they have to be removed in the process of extraction of metals. Now extraction of metals takes place by three main steps. Number one is concentration of the ore, that is enriching the ore. Second is reducing the metal to metal oxide, and the third step is refining, and that is purification of the metal. Now what is concentration of ore? That is enrichment, that is removal of gangue, I just told you, by different methods, and these methods you will learn in higher classes. Now students, you have a flow chart in front of you that how metals can be extracted from its ores. Now this depends on the reactivity. Metals which are high in the reactivity series, metals in the medium reactivity, and metals with least reactivity. Now metals, as you know, now we have to understand how metals can be extracted which are low in the activity series. Students, you know that metals low in the activity series are very unreactive. The oxides of these metals can be reduced to metals by heating alone. Take for example cinnabar, which is the ore of mercury. When it is heated in air, it is first converted into mercuric oxide, that is HgO. Mercuric oxide is then reduced to mercury on further heating. Coming to the reaction, HgS plus O2 gives HgO and SO2 on heating. Further, when HgO is heated, it gives mercury metal and oxygen. Another example in front of you is extraction of copper. Copper, which is found as copper sulfide in nature, can be obtained from its ore by just heating in air. The reactions for this extraction is CuS plus O2 gives CO2O plus SO2, and CO2O, when again further reacts with Cu2S, it gives copper and sulfur dioxide. Next is extracting metals in the middle of the activity series. Metals in the middle of the activity series such as iron, zinc, lead, copper are moderately reactive. These are usually present as sulfide or carbonates in nature. Now you should know that it is easier to obtain a metal from its oxide as compared to sulfide and carbonates. Therefore, prior to reduction, the metal sulfide and carbonates must be converted into metal oxides. The sulfide ores are converted into oxides by heating strongly in presence of excess air, and this is known as roasting. Roasting, you should have a definition which is easy one to memorize, that it is heating of an ore in the presence of oxygen, and where it is used to convert sulfide ore into its oxide forms. For example, zinc sulfide. When zinc sulfide is heated in presence of oxygen, it is converted into zinc oxide and sulfur dioxide, but the presence of air should be more. On the other hand, we have another process, that is calcination, and the definition of calcination is that when carbonate ores are changed into oxide by heating strongly in limited air, it is known as calcination, and the chemical reaction taking place during calcination is zinc carbonate. When heated in absence of air or limited air, it is converted into zinc oxide and carbon dioxide. The oxide ore is then reduced to metals by heating with a reducing agent, and the most common reducing agent is the purest form of carbon, that is coke. The reaction, to summarize, is zinc oxide plus carbon gives zinc and carbon monoxide. Coming to a very important reaction, which is also a type of displacement reaction and hyloexothermic reaction, is thermite reaction. And these reaction, that is the reaction of iron oxide with aluminum, is used to join railway tracks or cracks in machine parts, and this reaction is known as thermite reaction. The reaction between a metal oxides and aluminum, as you know, are highly exothermic, that is heat evolving, and the metals are obtained in molten state, and such reaction are called as thermite reaction. And for example, the reaction between iron oxide and aluminum produces molten iron, and this reaction is used to join railway tracks, broken machine parts, etc. Now students, in front of you there is a thermite weld, which you can understand that how large amount of heat is generated, and it is used for repairing broken tracks, and it is a very often used process by the Indian Railways. Coming to the last, that is extracting metal towards the top of the reactivity series. The metals high up in the reactivity series, as you know, are very reactive. They cannot be obtained from their compounds by heating with carbon. For example, carbon cannot reduce the oxides of sodium, magnesium, calcium, aluminum to their respective metals. Now, can you explain why? This is very important because these metals have more affinity for oxygen than carbon, and these metals can be only obtained by electrolytic reduction. Now, what is electrolytic reduction? That when sodium, magnesium, calcium are gone through the process of electrolysis in their molten state, what happens? The metals are obtained at the cathode, which is the negatively charged electrode, whereas chlorine, on the other hand, is liberated at the anode, the positively charged electrode. The reaction is in front of you. From front of you, for electrolytic reduction of sodium chloride, at cathode we get sodium metal, and at anode we get chlorine gas. Now the last stage of metallurgy is refining of metals. Why? The metals produced by the various reduction processes, as you have learned, are not very pure. They contain impurities which must be removed to obtain pure metal, and the most widely used method for refining impure metal is electrolytic refining. Now students, in electrolytic refining, we have to have an electrolytic chamber, and we have to have a block of impure metal which is made the positive electrode, that is anode, and a thin sheet of the pure metal which is made the cathode, and the electrolyte must be a salt solution of the metal to be purified. Now what happens when we pass electricity? When we pass electricity through this setup, the pure metal from the anode dissolves into the electrolyte, and an equivalent amount of pure metal from the electrolyte is deposited on the cathode. The soluble impurities go into the solution, whereas the insoluble impurities settle down at the bottom of the anode and is anode mud. For this, we have a diagram of electrolytic chamber in the next slide. Now, students, you should understand the method of electrolytic refining. I've just told you we have to have an electrolytic chamber, that is a tank. We have to have two electrodes. One is the negative electrode, the cathode, and the positive electrode, the anode, which is connected as per the rule of electricity law, and we have to have an electrolyte. And in this condition, we have to have copper extracted. We place acidified copper sulfate solution in this electrolytic chamber. Now on passing the current through the electrolyte, you find that the pure metal from the anode dissolves in the electrolyte, and an equivalent amount of pure metal from the electrolyte is deposited on the cathode, and the impurities, which are the soluble impurities, they go into the solution, whereas the insoluble impurities settle down at the bottom of the anode, and it is anode mud. So whenever in examination you have to draw a diagram of electrolytic refining, you have to label all the important components and show the process of electrolysis with a reaction. Coming to the last concept that is very, very important and really affects our daily life is corrosion. Some examples are in front of you which you encounter in daily life. Silver articles. They are very shiny. Silver is a very shiny metal, but they become black after some time when exposed in air. Why? Because silver reacts with sulfur in the air to form a coating of silver sulfide. Copper reacts with moist carbon dioxide in the air and slowly loses its shiny brown surface and gains a green coat, and this green substance is copper carbonate. Iron, as you know and encounter in your daily life, when iron is exposed to moist air for a long time, it acquires a coating of brown flaky substance which is called as rust. Now, these are the daily life examples: formation of brown coating of rust over iron, formation of green coating of basic copper carbonate over copper, and formation of black coating of silver sulfide over silver. Now, for corrosion to take place, there must be two very important factors. One is moist air. Air and water, they are the two factors which help in corrosion of metal. To understand the concept of corrosion better, I have to have an experiment in front of you, and that I will be sharing in my next slide. We have 3 test tubes and we place clean iron nails in each one of them. We label this test tube as A, B, C and D so on, and put some water in test tube A and just cork it. We pour boiled water in test tube B, add about 1 ml of water, oil and cork it. The oil will float on the water and prevent the air from dissolving, as you find in test tube second. In the third test tube, you find that you put some anhydrous calcium chloride to test tube C and just cork it. Anhydrous calcium chloride will absorb the moisture, if any, from the air, and we leave all this test tube for a few days and then observe. We find that the iron nails rust in test tube. Which test tube? Now you have to understand that the iron nails, we find they are rusty in test tube 3 and in test tube 4, but in test tube 1 and test tube 2, which are control experiments where there is no air, no water, the iron nails do not rust. With this experiment, we come to know that for rusting to take place, we have to have air and water in contact with the metal which is to be corroded. One important point to be noted is that all metals corrode, but iron rusts. If corrosion is there, prevention is also there. And how we prevent corrosion? We can prevent corrosion by a few important things. Number one, it can be prevented by applying oil or grease. This you find in your daily life. We apply paint to iron articles to prevent corrosion. Similarly, you find galvanized coating. What is galvanized coating? You have different utensils, you have different water pipes. Iron, as you know, it rusts very fast, so we coat it with zinc, which is less reactive and forms a protective coat on the iron tubes or the iron utensils in use. And this process of coating zinc over and above iron, this is called as galvanization. Now we can also coat iron with tin. Tinning is a process of saving the iron utensils, and we can prevent corrosion for a long time. And last and not the least is electroplating. Electroplating is again coating of iron with chromium. So this science is very clear to us now that when we coat iron with zinc, tin or chromium, which are less reactive, it prevents corrosion to some extent. But a very, very important concept which had been in practice for 1000 years is alloying. Now we should understand what alloying is. Students, alloy is a homogeneous mixture of metal with other metals or non-metals. We use different alloys in our daily life: steel, stainless steel, brass, bronze, shoulder. Now we have to have different metals or non-metals in fixed composition. Suppose we want to make steel, we have to have iron and carbon. For stainless steel, it is a mixture of iron, carbon, cobalt, nickel. Brass, as you know, it is a mixture of copper and zinc. Bronze, it is a mixture of copper and tin. And shoulder, it can be of lead and tin, and it is used for electrical wires altogether. Suppose there is an alloy of mercury with other metal, and that has got a particular terminology, and it is called as amalgam. Now you have in front of you the wonder of ancient Indian metallurgy, and that is iron pillar at Delhi. The history behind it is that the iron pillar near the Qutub Minar in Delhi was built more than 1600 years ago by the iron workers of India. They had developed a process which prevented iron from rusting. For its quality of rust resistance, it has been estimated by scientists from all parts of the world. The iron pillar at Delhi in Mehrauli is about 8 meter high and weighs about 6000 kg, and the most astonishing thing about it, it has not corroded over the last 1600 years or so. So that is wonder of science. Another wonder of science I want to share with you, and it is used in our daily life, is pure gold. Pure gold, as you know, is 24 karat gold, which is very soft, so it is not suitable for making jewelry. It is alloyed with either silver or copper to make it hard. Generally in India, 22 karat gold is used for making ornaments. It means that 22 parts of pure gold is alloyed with 2 parts of either copper or silver. Now, therefore, corrosion is a very, very important concept, and science has used it to its full use, and we can prevent corrosion to large extent. Thank you all for a patient hearing. I hope that you have understood the 2 topics in this video, and for the remaining part of the chapter of metal and non-metal, I am providing you the link, and you can use that link to understand the first topic of this chapter, that is properties of metals or non-metals. So that with these 2 videos, there is an exhaustive video in front of you. You can understand this chapter, which is very important in the science of chemistry, that is properties of metal and non-metal, how metal and non-metal reacts, what is reactivity series. So that all comes in the first video, and in this extended video which I have just shared with you, you can understand how ionic compounds are formed and what is the science of metallurgy. Thank you so much.